Good morning, students. As you can see, I am Mrs. Nell. You are the teachers that are studying mathematics. Very nice indeed, easy to do mathematics. You use your calculator and your formula and your rules and your laws. If you know it, it's very easy. Make sure you always have your protractor, pair of compasses, ruler, pencil, everything ready for your exams and your assignments. And make sure you study everything, not only the beginning of your mathematics books. Right, the numbers are always there. I'm not going to concentrate on every single number. You can go through this on your own. It's always in every exams. And the natural numbers, the factor, the prime factor, how do you find the LCM, the HCF, and so on. There are the methods and the examples, explanations, and sequences, the pattern of numbers and your terms, as well as your formula for the nth term is n squared. There you see some sequences and how you find the answer with the method. If you have squares and square roots and cubes, there you see the square is x squared, the square root, how it looks like, and the cube, x to the power 3. And directed numbers. Okay, there you see the even numbers, the odd numbers by multiplication and division. There are practical exams and examples from the exams. The vulgar and decimal fractions and percentages, how you use your calculator, and when you multiply by 100 to complete the table. There you see the vulgar fraction 1/4 or 1/4, decimal fraction 0.25, you just use your calculator to divide, and percentages 25%. To 1 decimal place, for example 0.3, 2 decimal places 0.25, and 3 decimal places 0.125. Ordering, ascending, that is from small to big, and descending will be from big to small. And standard forms, make sure you study your standard forms. I see students do not know how to do this. The scientific notation, like a very small number, 0, with a lot of zeros, 25. It is 2,5 times 10 to the power minus 6 in standard form. Very big numbers, there you see 25 with a lot of zeros, how many? And then 2,5 times 10 to the power 8. That's how we write standard form. There are 4 rules. I know that you are teaching this to your students as well. We just call it BODMAS, where we first start with the brackets and then of times, it means times and division. Then we do multiplication, addition, and then subtraction. That is what the learners have to study, as well as you when doing the 4 rules. Estimation. We don't get estimation a lot in exams, but it's always nice to think of what will the outcome be before we just write down an answer. It must make sense. Then ratio, proportion, and rate. The first one, ratio. We have to simplify and then we divide in a given ratio. Then we increase and decrease in a given ratio. Number 4, the given ratio and one outcome, the number. Find other number. There you see an example of proportion. Direct proportion, a straight line. Inverse, indirect proportion. For example, painting a school. There you see it's not a straight line graph. One moves up and the other one moves down. Right? Rate. The numbers with different units are compared, for example, speed, kilometers per hour, or the fuel consumption, kilometers per liter. There's a very nice example. Make sure you study this as well, how we do this. For example, express a speed of 120 kilometers per hour in meters per second. So 120 kilometers times 1000 to get it in meters. We know that there are 1000 meters in 1 kilometer. And 1 hour times 60 to get it in seconds, because it must be meters per second. Right, and we use our calculator. Make sure you use your brackets, otherwise your answer will not be correct. 33.3 meters per second. Percentages, I'm sure all of you know how to do the percentages. There you see the increase and decrease. Most of you can do this very nicely because you just use your calculator. Measures. You must know your measurements like length and area and volume. You must know it. So study this, because you have to teach it to your students as well. And the mass and the hour, the time. Time is very difficult for the learners. They forget that there are 60 seconds in 1 minute, and they forget there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. They always work with 100 and 100. And time, morning is AM, midnight 24 hours, midday 11 hours up to 13 hours, and the afternoon 14 hours up to 18 hours. I know it's very difficult for the students or the learners. They don't know time. Money. You need to know the exchange rate, and you must use the method of direct proportion. And there you see also simple interest and compound interest. Simple interest, you have the principal times the rate times the time and divided by 100. There are lots of examples in the books. I did not copy a lot of examples. I just copied the most basic parts of every chapter that you need to know. There we see some division and manipulation. For example, 2 in brackets, a plus 3. We multiply 2 with a, so we get 2a. And 2 we also multiply with 3 to get plus 3. Then for factorize, we have 4 different types. Common factor, difference between 2 squares, trinomials, and grouping. Go through this chapter as well. I hope you all know how to factorize. If you factorize or multiply back, you must get the same answer again. There we see some solutions of equations and inequalities and writing formula, linear equations and quadratic equations. You see that we are coming to graphs now. How we draw a graph, very important. How to find and complete your table, because you get marks for that. Substitution, or we can use elimination. And then we need to draw the graph. The graph you draw with a ruler and a pencil if it's a straight line. And if it's a quadratic equation, for example, a parabola, then you use freehand with a pencil and it must form a smooth curve. Right, there we see an example of a straight line graph or 2 straight line graphs. So always label your graphs, otherwise we don't know which one is which. And we can't give marks. Quadratic equations, for example, ax squared plus bx plus c, we have to factorize, and sometimes we need to use the formula. Please study this formula. otherwise you will not be able to do this. X is equal, if you don't know how to find x, then you can say x is equal to minus b. So you substitute with a b value. And then plus or minus the root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2 times a. And please make sure you substitute correctly. And your answer, you will always have two answers because it is plus or minus the root. Right? So study the formula. There you see an example of how you do this and work correctly with your calculator. Remember your BODMAS. Right, that's one part. And then solving linear inequalities, smaller than or greater than. Very nice. These were always very nice for me at school with level when we've done this. For example, solve for x in this 4 times bracket greater than 20. We simplify and you find that x is greater than minus 5. If you look at the next one, on the right hand side, it's greater than, and then when you divide by negative numbers, you divide by minus 12 on both sides, your sign changes. As you can see there, greater than becomes now smaller than. And you can go through in your book and to see why it is changing. Indices, rules, please study your rules, otherwise you will not be able to do this. So study all these rules that you see there. The graphs in practical situations. Interpret and use graphs in a practical situation. This is always nice to do because you just read off from your graph your answers or your solutions. Kinematics. You have distance divided by speed times time. So distance is equal to speed times time, and speed is equal to distance divided by time. Time will be distance divided by speed. Make sure you study this as well. You forget these formula and then you can't do this. There is an example of distance time graph. If you walk, it will be a graph going up. If you stand still, it's a horizontal line. And if you run, it will be going up very steep. And if you run back, it will go down very steep. Right there you see an example of that. Graphs of functions. There you see the straight line graph, perpendicular lines and parallel lines. And your curved graphs, the equations, quadratic equations. If A is positive, you have a graph looking like the first one there at the top. And the second one, if A is negative. For example, if A is minus a half or A is equal to minus 4, you will get a graph like that. The next one, there are two lines, curved lines. Cubic graphs. There you see how they will look like. And other curves, for example, y is equal to ax to the power n. There you see that one. Cartesian coordinates in 2 dimensions. We always plot the x value first and then we plot the y value. Where the two points meet, that is your, for example, point A. With your x value first and your y value second. The straight line graph, y is equal to mx plus c, where m is the gradient. It can be half or minus 3 or minus 3 over 6. And the c value is your y-intercept. Your y-intercept on your graph, where it goes through y on your graph. There you see a curved graph. First you have to complete the table and you will get marks for that. You see this smooth curve drawn by hand with a pencil. Very nice, and then you can read off the solutions that you need to find. Study this because I know that students do not know how to do this. Please study your graphs. Trigonometry. 3 figure bearings. You measure from north always, clockwise, to the given line. Sin, cos, tan. You must know this and how to find it, and use your calculator. Sometimes we can use Pythagoras if we have a 90 degrees angle in a triangle. Remember how to do this because it's always in exams. And solving problems in 3 dimensions. Go through the solutions that you have there, the questions. And the angle between 2 planes, 2 flat figures, how we find that. So you can draw it separately so you know what you have. For example, there the triangle EFG. You can use Pythagoras to find the answer. The angles between 90 and 360 degrees. Remember to study this as well, your terms and your angle properties. What is a point, a line, parallel lines, perpendicular lines, and so on. Bearings, the angles. Study your angles. It's sometimes in the exam a right angle, acute angle, obtuse angle, straight angles, and reflex angles. I know you have to teach this to the learners, so I'm sure you know this. Congruency, the shape is the same and the size is the same. As you can see there, the shape and size are the same. Similarity, the shape is the same but not the size, as you see there. The angles are equal but not the sides. The sides are in the same ratio. For example, 2 to 4 and 4 to 8. Then they are similar. The angle properties, this you must also study. I know it's at the end of the books and then the students do not study it, but it's very important. We don't just ask, for example, numbers or algebra. We ask everything in the exam papers as well as in the assignments. So study your revolution, your straight lines, the vertical, opposite, angles are equal, supplementary angles, complementary angles. I know that the students have to learn this, so the teachers will also know this. And the angles which are formed within parallel lines, the equal in parallel lines, the alternate angles, corresponding angles, co-interior angles. Make sure you know where the angles are, how they look like. And triangles, the sum total of angles in a triangle, 180 degrees. Isosceles triangle, how it looks like. Equilateral triangle, with all the sides the same length and all the angles, or the 3 angles, are all 60 degrees. The squares and the rectangles, angle properties of quadrilaterals. It's not difficult, so you have to study this with all the formula that goes with it. The rhombus, the parallelogram, the trapezium, and the kite. The angle properties of polygons. Sorry. What is a triangle, quadrilateral, pentagon, all those things? You must study this. It will not be given in the exams. How many sides it has, how many angles it has. Right, and there you see figures, regular figures and irregular figures. The angles in the circle, it seems to be difficult, but it's quite easy and quite nice. So if you get a question on, for example, circles and triangles, you fill in what you know after you've studied the properties. then you will find that you will easily get to your answer that you were looking for. So you can work on your diagram and fill in all the answers. The angles in a circle, there's a nice example of how to find all these different angles, X, Y, Z and W. The area and the perimeter when you have mensuration. The figures, the perimeter, the areas. These formula, please you have to study it. And when you get a question, always write down your formula first and then you carry on with your work. Even if you only have your formula right, you might get 1 mark. But if you don't write down your formula, then the examiner doesn't know whether you know the formula or not. And you can't get marks if it's wrong. Yeah, it says it is very important that you study these formula before you go on. Of volume and total surface area, how we find it, how we find symmetry, and the line of symmetry and rotational symmetry. Alright, and there are figures, triangles, squares, kite, pentagon, all those ones, how many lines of symmetry it has, and the rational symmetry. If you draw your figures, you will easily see this. And transformations, there are 3 different types: reflection and rotation, as well as enlargement. Reflection, the mirror image in a line, there's a line of symmetry. Rotation, you must give 2 answers there. It is, for example, rotation and it's clockwise or it is anti-clockwise. Enlargement, making use of a scale factor. You must always write down your scale factor. And also the center of enlargement will be asked. Statistics, it seems very difficult and you know how to make a tally with your frequency. Then you can draw your bar chart or your pie chart. Here's an example of how you find the sizes in a pie chart out of 360 degrees. There's a pictogram. Statistics, the mode, the median and the mean. Normally the mode and the mean do not give problems, but the mean sometimes has a problem of how students work it out. So go very carefully through how you how you find the mean of a graph. There it is. You add up all the values and you divide by the total. And leave your answer in a decimal place. Do not round it off. For example, 2,75, leave it as it is. Do not round it up to 3. Right. So, good luck students. I hope it will go well. Study everything. Study your formula. Study your equations. Your rules. And make sure you study not only the first part of your book. And know how to use your calculator. Thank you and good luck.